For the first time on this channel, we've got Santorini, the Riddle of the Sphinx. Welcome to Room and Board. Today we're going to be taking a look at Santorini, the Riddle of the Sphinx. This is the new co-op expansion. It's more for solo. For Santorini, and we're going to be talking about Santorini in general, reviewing Santorini, the base game, because it's back. It's back with a new and improved edition, a beautiful edition that is sure to be on Kickstarter, and they've thrown in an all-new sort of additional solo co-op-y puzzle if you're interested in that as well. And when I heard about this, I was very excited because I've been wanting to get my hands on Santorini for a while. I played it at a friend's house. I've played it at a few friends' houses. A few friends own copies. And it is such a lovely two-player abstract strategy game with a little bit of a twist, enough of a twist to keep you coming back more and more and more. It was #1 on my wish list for a while. I put it as #1 as like a must-have. I was just waiting for the right opportunity to pull the trigger and get a copy because I heard through the grapevine that there might be a new copy coming out, and so I waited to see what we have in store, and I am very excited for this to come back on Kickstarter. I think it's on Kickstarter. There'll be a link to whatever crowdfunding platform it's on down below, and if you're arriving at this at a later date, welcome. Wasn't it horrible the way I perished? At least we can joke about it. My grisly tomb. So let's talk about Santorini. If you've never played Santorini before, the premise is very simple. Get your little worker to the top of a tower before somebody else gets to the top of the tower. That's it. On your turn, you can do two things. You move and you build. You must do both of those things. If you can't do both of those things, then you're out. You lose the game. And that's one of the ways that you can win the game is by forcing your opponent, boxing them in so they can't move any of their two workers. What are you building? Well, you are building these towers, these 3-level towers. There's a base, there's a second level, there's a third level which you want to jump on, and then there's also a dome which you can use to block somebody who's about to jump onto the third level. It's a very simple premise. You go back and forth until somebody wins. And I love it for a number of reasons. One, you get 2 workers, so you're not defined or confined by one person. You can be doing something over in one area and then having someone else doing something in the other area. If you get boxed in, you always have that second chance of coming back. And then 2, the reason why I really enjoy Santorini and have been very excited to add it to my collection is the god powers. There are a number of different god cards. You'll see the B-roll on the screen are the god cards and related to the Riddle of the Sphinx, which I will talk about in just a second. But there's a number of different god cards, and each player will take one at the beginning of the game. These games are quick, right? They're 15, 20 minutes maybe. But you get this random god power, or you can choose, out of something like 40 god powers, and it gives a unique twist, a unique ability, a variable player power that you can use to affect this simple abstract strategy game premise. And I think that's where the genius of Santorini lies, is in these little role cards. Because without them, you'd be playing the same game over and over again and it would get stale. But with them, there are so many different combinations that you can encounter that make it very exciting. The last game I played, my opponent was playing Bia, and Bia is very powerful, or seems very powerful at the beginning, because if they take a step towards you and you're in their path, they obliterate you and just murder your worker. They just remove the worker off the board. However, if you know that, you can position yourself around so that Bia cannot move into you and murder you. There's very specific circumstances, and it's fun being able to juggle and balance that attack back and forth. One of my favorites is the Minotaur, who can just kick people off of buildings and move into their spot, and it feels very, very powerful. And so having those additional abilities makes it a replayable, exciting, awesome experience. If you don't have Santorini, you should contemplate either getting this copy, get it at the Kickstarter level, or get it at retail. It's been out in retail for a bit. I think with this new Kickstarter reprint, you'll see more and more copies hitting retail as well. It's just an immensely satisfying, quick, interesting, head-to-head abstract strategy game. If you like abstract strategy, if you like things like chess or things that require that level of thinking, things that are sort of contemplative and silent, if you like playing quietly and you don't like people yapping at you the way some idiots always do, well then Santorini might be the game for you as you sort of turn inward, focus on the puzzle at hand for 15 to 20 minutes, building blocks, etc. And I think that's perhaps where the co-op campaign mode might shine. It's framed as a co-op campaign mode, just as Santorini can play 2 to 4 players, but is really a 2-player game. I mean, even in the rules, they say, listen, it's best at 2 players. What are you doing? I've played it at 3 players once, and honestly, I had a good time because I just wanted to play Santorini. But it's best at a 2-player game. I think with this sort of expansion, it's best at a 1-player count. Because what it is you get this book of adventures. They're called a book of riddles, but they aren't really riddles. They're just efficiency puzzles that you have to solve with a set rule change here and there and variable maps, as it were. So there'll be a very basic setup. You'll have a number of workers that you can move around, and you often have to build a certain number of towers in a certain number of ways. If you do, you clear that puzzle. If you don't, well, you can clear the board and just try it again. And so the example, the tutorial that they give you shows you how that works out, and I'm having that play over the B-roll as well. You're going to just move simply and try to collect all of the gray tokens, which will give you an additional bonus, and then you can collect the gold tokens. You can do it in any order, but in this sort of tutorial it makes the most sense because the gray tokens involve placing down a little block, and the gold tokens require you to build a whole statue in this instance. How the god powers work and where the puzzle comes in is that your pieces and the amount of pieces that you have are limited. And they're not only limited by just the supply, but they're limited by how they come out. You'll start with only 2 or so pieces in the supply, and then each god card, you'll have a row of 3 to choose from, and then a deck of god cards as you progress further and further in the game, and you require larger and larger puzzles to make. New god cards will come out every time. You'll choose a god card, and you'll get the piece that is on that card. It might be a base, it might be a middle. They're very specific pieces which can be used in specific spots on the board. And obviously, like base Santorini, you have to build starting from the bottom, and now you're here. I can't believe I just quoted certainly a worse Canadian rapper than The Oddity. I can say that with absolute certainty. And so the god cards work a little bit differently because each one has their own quest. It basically involves using their power in the way it's dictated on the card while you build the thing that's on their card. And if you do so, you get another building block of your choice. And that's how you're going to slowly develop your pool, which you then need to use to build things on the map in the various scenarios. The tutorial is basically for babies. It's just to explain the mechanics of the game, and it should not be interpreted as anything interesting whatsoever. And in fact, the first 2 to 3 scenarios are like that as well. But as you go along, and I've played through a little bit, I played until the scenarios started to get interesting to me. And so that was around page 6, I'd say, page 6 or 7. They start to becoming a little bit more complicated, a little bit more exciting about the variables that you have to control. And thank goodness, because now I can talk positively about it. But all throughout the book, the premise remains the same. You have 3 actions that you can do on your turn. You can move and build. You can take a god card and put it in front of you. If you're playing with multiple players, you each can have up to 2 god cards, it says, which I didn't realize until I was stuck on, like, I don't know, scenario 5, and thought, gee, I wish I could have another god card, and then read the rules again and thought, oh, good, it allows me to have this extra god card. I was playing in a way to make it a little bit harder, and you could house rule that. But as you play through the book, the premise is going to be the same. You move and you build, you take a god card, and you take the piece that is on it and put it on top of the god card, and that's it. Oh yeah, and also you can play the Sphinx's game, which is just a little dice roll of chance. You can roll the dice, you can see if you can get an extra piece if you really need a piece and you don't have the ability to move things around. You can roll the dice and try it, but if you roll incorrectly, one of your workers may die completely. The reason why I forgot about this is because I never really did that, because the game should all be solvable without it. Or at least certainly the scenarios that I ended up playing. And that's good, because you don't want to get to the very end of the game and think, oh, I have to roll a dice mathematically, and there's a 66% chance that I might succeed and a 33% chance that that I don't get the piece that I need. All of the scenarios should be designed to be solvable if you're clever enough. If you can solve the riddles that the Sphinx presents. Again, not really riddles, they're just simple puzzles. What's also a little bit fun is that each objective that you complete, and basically you're going to want to complete all the objectives. If you don't complete all the objectives, you haven't really passed the game. You then get to scratch out a little section on this big adventure map and this big tableau of the gods. The constellation tree, as it were, and all these different gods you have access to. And so you have a choice of which gods you want to unlock. And then in later scenarios, when it says you can add in random gods, you can only add in the ones that you have unlocked. And you can only add in each god twice, basically, if you're playing by the rules. You cross them out once, you cross them out twice, then you can't use that god for the remainder of the scenarios, unless it's otherwise specified. And so this is kind of fun. It's kind of a nice, easy puzzle thing to do. But I think it is only for a very specific group of people. For me, it really felt like a solo game. It really did. And maybe that's because I played the tutorial with somebody else, and then we played the first couple scenarios and we thought, this is dreadfully easy, and there are no decisions to be made between us. We're just doing the very easy thing because we hadn't yet progressed into the more complicated areas. But even still, it's not necessarily an experience that I would be aching to share with someone. I could see it being used with, a parent and a child as an activity, a fun little building activity, building the blocks. I think that's where this could hit with. Or if you just enjoy the sort of solo puzzle. If you like things like Rush Hour, that traffic jam game, that's what this feels like a lot of the time. And for me, who's not a huge solo gamer, if this were an app, I think I would play it all the live long day. It'd be very easy to pull out, poke things on your phone until you brute force the answer, and then move on with your day. For it being an actual physical component, for a physical map, I love that it's in this sort of 3-ring binder, or I guess more than 3. Spiral bound binder, that's what it is. I absolutely love that it's going to come in this thing and you can just open it up, turn to a page, pull out your buildings and try to solve and be the most efficient as you can with the puzzle. I think that's going to make it pretty accessible. But I don't think you would ever do this with somebody. It's just something that you would want to pull out, think about as your own little puzzle, and then put away. I think that's how it should be used. I don't ever see me going to a game night and saying, hey, let's solve a Sudoku together. And just as I don't see myself going to a game night and saying, hey, let's all play the Riddle of the Sphinx together. It's something that I think if you're into solo gaming and you like Santorini, and you also like that sort of Rush Hour style of puzzles, I think this is then something that you might be interested in. I think if you're not into that, you should just consider the base Santorini, and really consider the base Santorini. I love base Santorini, competitive Santorini, infinitely more than I like the solo co-op puzzles. Because I love the powers, I love the head-to-head battling aspect of it, and I love how quick it is just trying to outthink each other. The Riddle of the Sphinx is more a contemplative, solo puzzly game that also feels like once you're through it, you're probably through it. And I don't know if you necessarily want to go back and complete it again if you figure out how to be efficient with it. That's not to say it isn't interesting, right? That's just to say that for my personal preferences and for my expectations, they were a bit shifted. And I think if you're going to get this, you want to know exactly what you're walking into. That being said, I think everyone should own Santorini, just base Santorini, because I think it's so fun. Even my friend who I played this with, who we thought, why are we doing this together? It's clearly something someone should just do by themselves. And he became a little less enamored with Santorini. I think I can hook him back with the base Santorini. We played a couple games. He enjoyed it more. And I know that I can convince him that Santorini is a beautiful masterpiece. So there you go. That's my conclusion. Not sure how much it's going to be. As always, on that front, you can tune into the Monday Show Crowdfunding Countdown, where I take a look at everything in its last week of Kickstarter, so you can see the value of the stretch goals, what have you, whatnot. But I do know something about this campaign, which also makes me really thrilled for it, is that you can bring your own plastic. That's kind of a huge highlight. If you already own Santorini and you just want additional stuff, they're going to have a pledge where you can only get the stuff that you need, and I think that's very considerate, considering lots of people own Santorini and wouldn't need doubles of the plastic. And so I'm thrilled that they're doing that for the people who want to get involved. Anyway, I hope this video was helpful in letting you know what was in this new expansion, why you should purchase, the base Santorini. And if you have any other questions, drop them in the comments below. I'll be happy to answer them to the best of my knowledge as the campaign progresses and as the years go by. As always, my name is Mork Florgenson, and I don't have a catchphrase. But thanks for watching. And please remember, if you are the authorities looking for Chris George, well, my name's Mork Florgenson, and I wish I could tell you where he was, but he certainly isn't here on this YouTube channel. Ooh, that was a close one.